Hey, just letting you guys know that a lot of things have happened that's kind of led to a few delays, one of them being these little guys. A while back, me and my mom found these guys in the front of our yard, and we wound up taking care of them. There were three, but the third brother, Kuro, was able to find a forever home. We did try finding homes for these two, but we eventually got really attached, so yeah, they're sticking with me. Their names are Sid and Murdoch. They're two little wild cards, but I love them. You might actually still hear them in some of the videos since, yeah, they like to hang out in my room, especially when I'm recording, so if you hear any, like, bells ringing or, maybe some purring, that's either them trying to play or they're just sleeping very close to my recording. Anyway, just want to give some explanation on that one and to let you guys know that, yeah, I have cats now, along with my dogs. He was Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. He was born in 1518 in the village of Glenfield, on the shores of Loch Shea, and he was immortal. Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we begin the next theme month. Once again, I have changed the name, as technically this is more of a prequel than a continuation. So for the third and last time, I've changed the name to something more simple. Welcome to From Screen to Page month. The first two theme months dived into things that I've always had a love and appreciation for. The fun and excitement of Worlds Clashing and Crossover Month. Then last year dived into the amazing tales of gods and adventure with Mythology Month. And now we dive into another one of my favorite subjects, film. In the case of this theme month, I'm only going to be covering comics that are based around films that are not already based on comics. So sorry, no Batman 89 or Superman 78. However, films based on books are okay. But that's a discussion for another time. Today, as the opening implies, we're covering a prequel comic to one of the Kings of Sword fights, a story of love and loss, and with the help of the band Queen, asks the question, who wants to live forever? As we will tackle The Highlander. Released in 1986 and directed by Russell Mulcahy and written by George Wilden, Peter Bellwood, and Larry Ferguson, Highlander told the tale of Connor MacLeod, who was born in 16th century Scotland, who while facing against a rival clan meets one of their most savage warriors known as the Kurgan, and fatally stabbed, but does not die. He is then met by a swordsman by the name of Ramirez, who reveals to Connor that he is not just an immortal, part of a select group of immortals, must face off in combat as only another immortal can kill him, and once there's only one, they will gain a great prize known as the Quickening, gaining unimaginable power. Ramirez would train Connor in several forms of combat, in particular the ways of the katana and destreza, a Spanish form of sword fighting, as he spent years in both Japan and Spain, the latter where he adopted his name. The film would jump back and forth from the 16th century to modern day, well, the 1980s at that time, but still, where Connor is one of the last of the immortals along with the Kurgan and getting ready for a final battle, which led to sequels, spin-offs, and even an anime and animated series, with only two of them being any good. The sequels kind of missed the point of why the first movie was so good, and even retconning the more mysterious origins of the immortals, and the animated series was just why? But we're here to talk about comics, in particular the Highlander comic that was published by Dynamite in 2008, serving as a prequel to the film. Does it hold up? Well, let's dive into Highlander, The Way of the Sword, and find out. Yeah, heads up. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the right scans for this one, so I'm gonna have to improv a lot. So I'm either going to be using some original sketches, which are most likely going to just be stick figures, images from the film, or from one of the few scans I was able to get. Yeah, sorry about this one, but sometimes you gotta make do. Anyway, on to the story. Warning spoilers. Heads up, I'm going to be spoiling both parts of the comic and the film, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I'd recommend stopping the video now and checking out the movie. Our story begins in 1804, on the open seas, as Connor MacLeod on the HMS Victory, which is under attack by an enemy ship. Fun fact, the HMS Victory is a real ship. It was turned into a museum in Portsmouth, England, and is still open to the public. However, the ship was retired in 1765, 39 years before this fight. Along with the historical inaccuracies, we got a bit of a retcon as MacLeod is facing off against the Kurgan, despite the film making it very clear that up until the 1980s, the two haven't seen each other since the 1600s. This also kind of diminishes the Kurgan a bit as MacLeod, though struggling, is able to beat him. However, before he can do the final blow, the two are separated and the villainous immortal takes MacLeod's sword, once owned by Ramirez before the Kurgan killed him, along with him. Fast forward to 1966, where the sword is found in London, where it's sold off in a pub to a man by the name of Antonio Durand Lorenzo, who unknowingly is being spied on by a fellow patron by the name of Ian, who's been helping McCloud, going by the alias Russell Nash, search for it, leading them to Paris, and catches the eye of another immortal by the name of Gurin Billud. And okay, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. This half is pretty boring. The only thing worth bringing up is that Connor meets an antique store owner by the name of Elizabeth, who leads him to a secret auction. The sword will be placed at for bid. Gurin killed Ian, flashbacks to how the Kurgan lost a sword, McCloud kills Gurin, and Antonio gives a sword to a man by the name of Toshiro Nakata, who claims to be the true owner of the sword, killing Antonio and leaving to Japan as McCloud follows, where he learns Toshiro's true identity. It's revealed that he is a fellow immortal who met McCloud's old friend Ramirez when he was a child during Japan's Azuchi Momomaya period, as he was the son of the man who would bestow his sword, the legendary blacksmith Masamune. And if you're wondering, yes, Masamune did have children. He had 10 sons and 4 daughters. However, none of his children shared the name of either Toshiro's real name, Ren, or Ramirez's wife, Chikiko. Toshi hated Ramirez, of course being an outsider, but also being so loved by his father to get the sword that he hoped to get, but was refused as his dad found him as a failure. So he wanted the sword believing to be rightfully his, and to give both Ramirez and his father the finger. However, Connor will not give up the sword without a fight. How will that go? What will you learn about Ramirez? And Elizabeth is still here? For the first two, you're gonna have to read to find out, but the latter, apparently. This book is passable. The beginning is pretty boring and really doesn't get good until we meet Toshiro, and even a bit more backstory on Ramirez, but even then, it feels like the writer, J.T. Krull, was stretching it out, especially when it comes to Elizabeth's scenes. As for Krull, I've only read 2 of his works. One good, like the series Joker's Asylum, an anthology, which is really fun, especially if you're a fan of Batman villains, but also the god-awful, like The Rise of Arsenal. Yeah, the one where Roy Harper loses his daughter, calls his friend a whore, and blames her for her own child's death, despite the fact that all she tried to do is try to comfort him, and then he gets addicted to paying. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Point is, my exposure to his work is very limited, and it's mixed. And it kind of perfectly sums up this book and its cast. Moving on to the characters, we got the Highlander, Connor McCloud of the Clan McCloud. He's not too different from his film counterpart. He's stoic in nature, but not to the point where he comes off as antisocial. In the film, he yearns to be mortal like everyone else, as when he learned the truth of his immortality, he was married, but of course, as he stayed young, his wife would eventually grow old and die. He gave up finding love again, but finds a new love in the film. However, the writer decides to have that be the second time he learned to love again, as he has a relationship with Elizabeth, but it's kind of pointless as, yeah, if this is supposed to be canon with the film, you already know where this is going. Besides the ill-fated romance, we get some internal monologue regarding what he thinks of other immortals and how they operate, and how he uses his centuries of knowledge to track down and make contact with people to help him on his mission, along with the fights that helps him analyze his opponents and the best way to beat them. Connor's still fun to follow, and seeing him fight for the sword for the sake of his old friend is a great moment. Next, we got Connor's oldest foe, the most dangerous of the immortals, the Kurgan, and boy does Krull tone him down. In the movie, the Kurgan was one of the most disturbing and chaotic of the immortals, killing and defiling anyone and anything in his path. You could never figure out what his next move was, except that anyone around him would be in serious danger. The book would make you think that would be the case, but nope, despite Connor telling us how dangerous he was, it never feels like that. They also have him come off more as an idiot, as he apparently lost the sword, something that he kept for 114 years as a trophy, by simply getting robbed. Now granted, the robbers in question were women who he coerced into sleeping with, so he definitely deserved it, but still, they got out of that pretty easily. You'd think he'd go after them, as that was his prize. But what else can I say? Instead of burning out, he faded away. Next, we got Elizabeth, and as you can guess, I found her pretty boring. She's meant to be the one to make Connor believe that he can find love again and be helpful to him collecting and studying artifacts. We even learn that she's actually Antonio's sister, and even dives into how they got involved in the underworld auctions. But I'll be frank, I just don't care. Most of the time, she's just spouting out dialogue that's either exposition or lines that are supposed to sound flirty. I'm sorry, but unfortunately, there's nothing else I can say for her except that, well, she's boring. Next, we got Ramirez, who, despite having a limited appearance, especially by this point, he's still long dead, we get to learn more about him. We see what he was like when he first fought the Kurgan, and get a glimpse of his time in Japan, and of course, when he was training Connor. You still get the sense that he is this warrior who's seen it all, mostly because he has seen it all. I do wish we did get to see more of his time in Japan, but maybe one of the other spin-off books would cover that. Either way, you definitely see why Connor would want to get the sword back. Next, we got Toshiro, the in-universe first son of Masamune and Ramirez's pissed off immortal brother-in-law. Honestly, he's probably the best part of the story, as besides of course hunting down other immortals to gain the prize they all want, he seems to be more motivated by hatred and jealousy. Despite living for hundreds of years and outliving the two people he hated the most, he never let go and focused on solely regaining what he felt was owed to him. I do think we should have spent more time on his childhood as Ren, since most of what we see are only in one flashback, and the rest in exposition when he faces Connor, but just from what we did get, made him a cut above the rest of the class. As for the rest of the cast, honestly, they're pretty forgettable, with the exception being Antonio, and it's only because he helped start the story. The art was done by Carlos Rafael, and he's decent. The designs are already established characters, but his action scenes are a lot to be desired, as they feel very stilted, and it's not like, let's say, Mike Mignola, where even though it's just a single image, you feel the impact and motion. There's a weight to it. In here, it's lacking. Again, the fights with the Kurgan really felt lacking despite being one of the most dangerous immortals around. Speaking of, was he posing as Connor's crewmate? I noticed that his men look like traditional pirates of that era, but he's wearing a naval uniform like Connor and his crewmates. What was that about? Anyway, his art's fine, but his fight scenes are really lacking any weight. On a whole, Highlander Way of the Sword is fine, but not really a book I'd pursue. If you happen to come across this and choose to pick it up, it won't really hurt, but unless you're a major fan of the series and trying to complete a collection, I don't see anyone tracking it down. At least still better than the animated series, and one of the sequels, even if it ain't much. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. Next time, well, I'd like to tell you, but I can't. First rule. Later.